So, due to some of the feedback, we are using a shotgun mic. So hopefully that will make a difference with how the video sounds and everything. Please continue to give me your feedback so I can continue to make the videos better and better and better. So we're going to be talking about, I struggled a lot with where to start with martial arts. One thing I mentioned, I was in martial arts for a very long time. I'm in the Hall of Fame twice, formally studied 50 different styles, 2 10th degree black belts that I got from Phil Porter and stuff. So, but we're just going to start out with which style should you choose? Subtitled, which style's the best? So, before we get started though, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, all the YouTube things. I've got a little bonus story at the end, if you do. Otherwise, you shut it off. Anyway, so, I'm CK, this is Strip View. Today we're talking about martial arts, one of the subjects we're going to talk about periodically because it's one of the subjects I know a lot about. And that's what we talk about on this channel, is stuff I know a lot about. I get or hear a lot of questions about. So, one of the big things that you run into with martial arts is which style's the best, what style should I do to be the most effective, blah, 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 blah. All right. And here's the thing. To a large extent, they're all the same. It depends on the practitioner. Okay? And in this case, the practitioner is you. So, what martial art should you do? Now, a couple of things we need to get straight. First off, martial arts are not just Asian. All right? Big misconception. Actually, the term martial art was originally used by the Knights Templar to describe what sort of training they would give to people who signed up to be knights. And then it wasn't until years later when people from Asia started immigrating to the United States and started teaching that then they used that term. So terms like grandmaster, master, all that stuff, that all comes from the Knights Templar, essentially. Obviously, during colonization and stuff like that, those terms were used by Europeans to describe the fighting styles and training and everything. And so when they were going to market stuff in the United States, it's like, well, what do white people call this stuff? Oh, they call it martial arts. So there you go. Anyway, so obviously, a lot of this stuff I give the Reader's Digest, the Cliff Notes version, because to go into the whole story would take forever. So if I kind of gloss over one of these things quickly and you want to hear more about it, just let me know. I can do a video about it. It's not a big deal. And one of the things you'll get with me, especially with martial arts, but with everything, is the truth. The ugly truth that no one wants to talk about. Okay? So, with martial arts, you get a lot of which is better. You hear a lot about MMA. Oh, MMA, it trains you to really fight. Rah, 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 rah. It trains you to compete in a sport. A sport with a lot of fighting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, MMA is a good thing to learn. I spent years doing MMA. I was one of the early MMA guys. Before the government got involved, I was at local bars, doing MMA fights. at the bar for, if you won, you got $100 or $200 or a gift card, whatever. I was one of those guys, okay? But it's gotten more and more sportalized. I don't think that's a word. Sportalized. It's a new Strip View word. Ian Kovleen, that's the style I teach. Anyway. Of course, the style I teach is the best style. But you probably don't have access to that. There are only a few people out there qualified to teach it. So unless you happen to be around, you know, Brian or Jason or Rachel or whoever, you know. And most of them don't necessarily even view themselves as qualified to teach. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. And normally I don't name names, but that was a good name, so. The thing is it depends on the person, alright? So, with martial arts, you have to be brutally honest with yourself about who you are and what you can do and what you're good at and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because if you're not, you're going to end up spending a whole lot of time, energy, and money to accomplish very little, if not nothing. Okay? So, also, weapon styles. So, you've got Eastern, you've got Western, you've got all kinds of different fighting styles out there. I all count as martial arts. You got all kinds of weapons fighting and stuff like that out there. I count as martial arts. My baby mama, she's national archery champion. I count archery as a martial art, personally. Okay? And if you go to Japan, there is a martial art based on archery. So there you go. I probably should have looked up what it was called. I can't remember off the top of my head. There are so many out there, it's hard to remember all of them. So, are you a weapons guy? Are you more a striking type of person? Are you more a wrestler? What's your frame? What's your build? If you're tall and skinny and lanky, all right, something like a taekwondo or a kempo karate, something fencing is going to, or savate, which is French foot fighting. All right, those styles would be great for you, whereas judo, wrestling, not so much. You just don't have the frame for it. At the same time, let's say you're heavier. Okay? Taekwondo probably isn't going to work out for you. But judo will be great. Where's your center of gravity at? You know? Judo, if you've got a low, solid center of gravity, that's what you need to succeed. Whereas if you're tall and lanky and your center of gravity's up high, you're going to spend a lot of time hitting the mat. So, and then, so not just physically, but then mentally. What is your, not just what is your goal, but what is your mentality? Okay? Are you okay with inflicting maximum damage? Are you okay with maiming, crippling for life someone? Or would you really rather die? Okay? So like one of the things I teach in my women's self-defense class is the eye gouge. And I always tell them, you know, you jam your fingers in their eyes and you keep pushing, and you don't stop until the blood reaches your elbow. Sounds brutal. It is brutal. It's real life. Or are you more the type of person that wants to, lock someone up in a hammer lock and sit on them till the cops show up? Now, they're both equally viable. Okay? Neither one of those techniques is better or worse or anything than the other. I tend to take a little more brutal mindset towards it. A lot of martial artists, a lot of martial arts instructors, experts and stuff, they'll talk about the discipline and the this and the that and whatever, respect and bowing and flags and whatnot. And I'm not like that, okay? To me, it's about fighting, One of my favorite quotes is in the movie Mark of Zorro. And Antonio Banderas grabs the sword. He's like, let's go. And Anthony Hopkins' character says, do you even know how to use that thing? And he goes, yes, the pointy end goes in the other man. And a lot of fencers and other sword fighter types tend to laugh at that. But that's an undeniable truth about not just sword fighting, but I mean all fighting. Any martial art you take, even Tai Chi, really, the goal is to be able to defend yourself with a level of violence against the other person. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind. But what level of violence you're okay with is an important factor. All right? So if you're good, if you think that real life is going to demand of you to rip someone's eye out, bite their ear off and spit it in their face, that sort of thing, then there are certain styles that are good for you. The more militaristic type styles, like more your Krav Magas, okay? But if you're more the type that wants to tie someone up, put them, not disabled, but just hold them down till the police get there or whatever, then you would want to look at, say, a Jiu-Jitsu. And not necessarily just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are a bunch of styles of Jiu-Jitsu. A northern small circle Jiu-Jitsu is great for wrist locks, finger locks, joint locks, stuff like that. And let me tell you, finger locks, you can take control of someone with the good finger lock. So don't underestimate these things. Aikido is another example of something of a martial art that can often be trivialized or overlooked or whatever. But so depending on your mentality, who you are as a person, and what you are willing to do, that also depends on that. So if you have someone that is not willing to seriously maim someone, and they say study a Krav Maga, okay? It's useless. They're not going to do it, okay? I knew a guy one time who was in a karate style that involved a lot of breaking coconuts and bricks and things like that. I never got into breaking too much myself. And he was in a real life situation one time, and of course his instructor had preached the whole coconut breaking as like, oh, it's like someone's skull. Well, then this guy was scared to really hit someone because he was afraid he was going to bust their skull open like he busted coconuts open. Which, of course, is not at all how it works. I mean, hell, just the physics. You hit it, it moves. It's not a solid object resting on a solid surface. You know, it's got joints, it flexes. There's all kinds of the biology and all the physics, and it's all different. It's all different. And that's why instructors can make a big difference, which we'll talk mostly about instructors and another thing. But you can take a good style for you that fits your body type and everything, but if you got a lousy instructor, you know, at the same time, you could take a style that's not very good for you on paper, but if you have a great instructor, it could still be great. But we're going to try to stay focused just on style. Obviously, I can go off on these tangents, so I have to stay focused. Must focus, Daniel-san. Anyway. So, at the same time, you could take a style, let's say like Aikido, that a lot of people a lot of your MMA or even your Krav Maga, a lot of your more hardcore martial artists will make out to be garbage. Or you take a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. But if it fits with your body type, your personality, everything like that, it's going to be very effective. It's going to be much more effective than someone who trains in something that's supposedly more effective, but it doesn't fit them. Okay? So, and that's what makes it very difficult. And that, of course, brings up the difference between sports styles and other. Because sometimes you've got real life styles, but you've got like military styles. You've got that are fighting styles just made up for the military. Scars was created for the Navy SEALs. That's the style I'm trained in. Well, that's one of the styles I'm trained in. Which I love, incidentally. And then you've got like hidden styles. So there's a type of fighting that was more or less developed in prisons for if you're handcuffed. That, you know. Tai Chi was originally done so that they could practice their fighting styles without their Japanese conquerors knowing what they were up to. Capoeira, of course, was in Brazil from slaves who were practicing their fighting styles and hit it like they were dancing. All right? So there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there. You've got Glimma, national sport of Iceland, that's Viking wrestling. That's surprisingly similar to Sisiri, which is a Korean style of wrestling, which is surprisingly similar to sumo. Believe it or not, sumo is not just two fat guys slamming into each other and hoping one falls down. There's actual real technique and stuff like that they learn. Now obviously sports styles have their limitations in that you've got rules and rounds and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they have their strengths in that they do a lot of sparring. You know? So you're going to be in matches, you're going to train for matches, you're going to compete in tournaments, etc., etc., etc. All right? So that's going to work on your timing and your speed and all sorts of stuff. Whereas, say, one of your militaristic styles, because of what you're learning, you're never really full on practicing what you've learned. All right? So, and some people really talk up that practice, that practicality of MMA. I forgot to mention, when I was talking about martial arts like capoeira and tai chi and stuff, kung fu originally was just a series of exercises, so the monks weren't all out of shape and fat. That's how kung fu started. And now there's a gazillion styles of kung fu. I mean, Northern Praying Mantis could be the style for you. Now, I don't know where the hell you're going to find someone that teaches that, but I don't know where you live. You could live in a place that has that. I don't know. But so there are a lot of styles out there, and when you put them in, when you try to say this versus that, like the original UFC was, it's different now. Now it's its own sport. It's its own style, really. Now, you can go to a million different MMA gyms, and you're going to learn basically the same thing at all of them. Whereas, back in the early days, it was a Kung Fu guy versus, or a Kempo Karate guy versus a Sumo guy. You know? Which, that particular fight shows you just how well the right strike can do you. You know, those were also the days when you could punch another man in the groin repeatedly over and over and over again. You can't do that now. You could jam your fingers into their neck and their throat. You can't do that now. You know, you could grind your elbow into their eye socket. You can't do that now. All right? So it's changed a lot. And they've got rounds and weight classes and all this stuff. And real life doesn't have rounds and weight classes and all that stuff. So you got to do a lot of thinking about who you are and what you want. Because pretty much any martial art can be viable self-defense. And one thing I'll probably talk a little more in a later video is the longer people are in martial arts, the more they elevate this fictional idea of the street fighter, like, because they played video games when they were a kid, and they think, like, I don't know, frickin' Ryu is out there, and he's got a Hadouken, but, that's not how it works, alright? Most people, like 90%, or more, have no training at all. They don't even know how to throw a punch worth a damn. They've seen some movies and they just sort of, they don't even know how to make a fist right. Alright? So, these mythical street fighters that have that martial artists make out to be some sort of monolith, they just don't exist. Trust me, they don't exist. I've worked in law enforcement. I've trained law enforcement. I've trained military personnel. I've worked in security, which a lot of people, you were no. I work security at off-strip casinos in Las Vegas, man. Like, you don't even know. I mean, okay? Working security in Vegas, graveyard shift, at the casinos, on or off the strip, man, that is a whole nother world. you will deal with some of the craziest stuff that you can imagine. You know, there'll be a big brawl of like 5 or 6 guys, and there's just you. And your job is to stop that and break it up and cuff these guys up. And you've got one set of cuffs. And, I mean, you're ducking punches and grabbing and putting them down and everything. And that's also another thing that, you know, you don't want to bloody people up when you're working security, because it just looks bad. It's not... You're seen in an authority situation, and that's something we've seen with a lot of law enforcement, is their training just isn't... I guess this is the controversial thing I'll talk about. This was the controversial thing I had planned, but a lot of security, law enforcement, a lot of security comes from law enforcement types, and a lot of law enforcement gives preference to people who served in the military, okay? And so, basically, the hand-to-hand combat training they're given is the same combat training they give in the military. And those are 2 incredibly different jobs. All right? So, people in the military, of course, are being trained to kill people. Kill the enemy, the opponent, the other side. Law enforcement, however, is not. You should be striving to not kill anyone, really. So they need to be trained in more control, constrain type of moves. So a lot of times when especially when it's an unarmed situation, and the perp or the suspect, let's say, gets injured, killed, it's an accident, okay? It's not that they want to kill them, it's that they don't have the training to know how not to. You know what I mean? So it gets very complicated, and I know it's a very controversial subject right now, and sometimes there are bad people out there who do bad things, and do bad things on purpose. Okay, I'm not saying that doesn't exist, that does exist. All right, but I'm saying that most of the time, it's that they don't have the appropriate training for what they're doing, which is something I have tried to spread and to tell people and to talk about, and it's gotten me absolutely nowhere except generally fired. So, generally speaking, the boss doesn't want to hear that what they're doing is wrong, no matter how tactfully you put it. So, anyway, that can be your controversial thing. I'm going to go ahead and pretty much wrap it up with that. It gives you a pretty good overview of which martial art should you do, which martial art's best. It depends on the situation, it depends on the person, it depends on. Can a judo guy or can a Wing Chun guy beat an MMA guy? And you can find stuff on YouTube that will argue either way. And it comes down to the situation and the individuals and the training each individual has had. So, it isn't that easy an answer. All martial arts are designed to teach the individual how to fight and how to defend themselves. It's just how they go about doing that varies. And how the individual applies that knowledge and what they're taught and everything, that varies. So don't think that there's some golden thing out there. If you hear someone talking about, especially the two you hear the most about, and that's why I've mentioned them the most in this video, is MMA and Krav Maga, and acting like they are the best out there, they're very good. They're very good. I greatly enjoyed my time in both. But it depends on you. It might not be best for you. Or you could get sold on MMA being so great, but maybe you don't live in Las Vegas where there's an MMA gym on every corner. All right? So maybe that isn't an option for you. So be honest with yourself. Do an assessment of yourself, etc., etc. And also think about situations, you know. Taekwondo on say in a hilly parking lot in the Midwest in winter that's covered in a sheet of ice isn't going to work so great. Whereas wrestling in an alley with broken glass, people talk all the time about, oh, most fights go to the ground. Well, if the ground is covered in gravel and broken glass and needles, maybe you're in San Francisco or downtown Los Angeles, and dirty needles and rat droppings, rolling around in that might not be the best idea. You may want to try to stay on your feet. In which case, boxing. Very good. So, we're going to wrap it up there. Controversial issue about law enforcement training often comes from the military, which has a very different mission. Okay. All right. So, and I've worked in law enforcement. I've worked with law enforcement individuals. Most of them are good people. Now, I quit when I discovered I was becoming a jerk. Okay? I wouldn't say I had full-on police paranoia syndrome, but that is a real thing. And you deal with dirtbags lying to you all day, every day, and it can get to you. Not everyone. And it got to me. It got to me. And I was